available throughout this week. Secondly, on top of that, I want to thank you for not canceling the meeting. There's a lot of canceling going on. There are a lot of churches that aren't meeting because of stress or because of whatever, because of concern, and we all get that, but I'm glad that you didn't. Christians were separated long enough, and you can't edify and you can't encourage who you're not around. So thank you for going forward with this. If people don't come, they don't come, but you provided the opportunity, and that's all that you are responsible for. So thank you for making that possible. And I want to thank you, thirdly, for not just having it, for not canceling it, but for letting me be a part of it. You know, this is not, I was talking to Glenn and Patricia have been out west. You know, there are places out west. You are hours from sound churches. There are some places out there, there's one or two in the entire states. Thankfully, we live in North Alabama. There's a lot of preachers. There are a lot of teachers. There are a lot of people you could have asked to be here. So I don't take it lightly that you've asked me. I thank you. Thank you so much for that. I hope this week is going to be beneficial to us. I hope that it's things that will be practical and things that will make us better going forward. Carla and I are not stressed out. Carla and I are not anxious. Use us however you want to use us. If you've got somebody you'd like us to go visit with you, use us. We are not worried about being around people whom we don't know, whom we don't meet. It's not something we're worried about. I throw that out for your own benefit. If we're here to work, and if there's something we can do to aid you through this week, let us know. As we read the 34th Psalm, so before we do, just remind us of the incredible blessing that prayer is. You know, do we really appreciate, and when's the last time we really just thought about the fact that the Creator of this universe lets us talk to Him? Imagine trying to talk to the governor. Maybe you could. Chances are you couldn't get through. Talk to a senator. Decide you were to call a senator on your cell phone. Yeah, good luck with that. You want to talk to one of our representatives in Congress. Yeah, good luck with that. And yet here's the Creator of heaven and earth that not only makes it possible, but desires it, wants it. It's mind-blowing. And that seems to be what the psalmist is saying. Look in the 34th Psalm. Look in verse 15. The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and His ears are open to their cry. And now me and you read that. Wait a minute. I thought we was reading the Psalm. That's 1 Peter. No, 1 Peter's copying that. Peter was copying the Psalm. We spend most of our time in the New Testament, and we associate that phrase with 1 Peter chapter 3. He was verbatim from the Psalm. No, prayer was appreciated long before Peter wrote that letter. Verse 16, the face of the Lord is against them that do evil, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. The righteous cry, and the Lord hears. He's made a contrast between unrighteous and righteous. The righteous cry, and the Lord hears. He delivers them from their troubles. The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart. Save such that be of a contrite spirit. It's as if the psalmist is saying, this is incredible, that He would hear us. What a wonderful blessing that He hears, that He responds. Think about all of the times we can look back and an answered prayer. Hebrews chapter 4 that says that we can boldly come to His throne. That boldly there is not arrogance. That's not us barreling through the door with a crowbar. No, it's confidence. That's the idea behind boldness. When it says we can boldly go to His throne, it means we can confidently go there because He's made it possible, and He desires it, and He wants it. Did anybody here not know that? Anybody here not know prayer is a wonderful privilege? Did anybody here not know that prayer is this incredible gift that's given to God's children where we have the ear of the King? Anybody here not know that? Of course we know it. Of course we appreciate it. Of course we're aware of it. Then why is it that we don't pray as we should? Isn't it strange that we can appreciate it and acknowledge it and recognize it for the blessing that it is, and then just let it sit there? I'm talking to myself. Now, if it applies to you too, wonderful, and I hope it does. But if I were to ask you, when you're in worship, you having trouble with your worship? Probably your answer will be something like this, where, sometimes my mind will wander. Sometimes my mind kind of gets away, but I pull it back. If someone were to ask you, how's your character? How's your morality? There's some things I'm fighting with. Some of these things I've been fighting with since I became a Christian. There's other things I have gotten control of, but as I've gotten older, other things but I fight. And I'm working toward them, and I recognize my weaknesses, and I'm trying to get rid of them. How's your prayer life? And we don't even pretend, do we? We don't even fake it. We know we could be better at it. We know we could be more consistent with it. We know we let opportunities pass us by, and we don't take advantage of what we have earlier acknowledged as an incredible blessing. What is the problem? What are some reasons behind that? And before we go any farther, I want to make sure you understand, we are talking about private prayer life. We're not talking about when we're together. We mentioned this morning. But we've already been led in prayer several times today. And my brother who just led us in prayer, thank you for that. You took us to the throne of God and you led us well. Thank you for that. When we are here, oh, come on. Prayers take care of themselves. They get handled in the wash. I'm not talking about when we are here. Now, here's the humbling thing. If the bulk of your prayer life happens in this building, you have no prayer life. That's just the bluntness of it. If the only time you're praying, if the majority, it's not just go make an extreme statement. If the majority of your prayers is here, you got a prayer problem. Because you're here at most 4 hours a week. That's at the top of the curve. If the bulk of our prayer life is in assemblies, we truly don't have a prayer life. So what's the problem? What is it that we just lump prayer? Oh, that's I have a problem with my temper. My grandmother had a problem with that. My dad had a problem with that. Now I've got a problem with it. I have a problem with this, and I've always had a problem with that. And as if that makes it okay. Because we've always struggled with it, that makes it okay. If this is something you've always struggled with, that doesn't mean we have to keep on struggling with it. It doesn't mean we get content to just keep struggling with it. We're talking about private prayer life, and I hope we give attention to it. I hope we give heed to this. Because there are some answers we would give to this. If we're being honest. If we're not trying to show off, there are probably some things we would say, not as a sense to justify, maybe not even as an attempt to excuse, but there are some things we might say that might explain why we might not be praying as we ought. And the first one might be that we're just too busy. Satan's greatest ammunition is when there's a little bit of truth to it. Well, there's a little bit of truth to this. We are busy. We live in a busy culture. It's go, and it's go, and it's go, and we got to be somewhere. Our lives are full speed. We have work responsibility because after all, a man doesn't apply for his family. Worse than an infidel, right? I got to work. And I'm a husband and I'm a wife. God gave me responsibilities. And I'm a citizen. God gave me responsibilities. I am busy. I got all these things going on. Got all these irons in the fire. Work, family, chores. Did you see the weather report? I'm only going to have like 2 hours to get my grass cut. I got to do it. And wonder how close to some schedules I get tomorrow. 8 o'clock, you have to be here. By 8:30, this phone call has to be made. By 10 o'clock, you have to have the kids somewhere over here. By 11:30, this has to be done. By 1:30, this has to be done. By 5 o'clock, you've got this appointment to be. And our days are slammed. And so what happens is we do that. Oh, I've got to work, and I have family responsibilities. I've got to spend time with the kids. I've got to spend time with this. I've got to get this. And then the night is here. Day is gone. And we look back maybe with some shame, and we say, I didn't pray today. I didn't pray very often today. Tomorrow's going to be better. I'll pray more tomorrow. And at 8 o'clock, we got to be here. And at 8:30, we got to be here. And at 10:15, and it just starts all over again. It's just this cycle that never ends. The day is gone. And we haven't prayed like we should. But we don't feel all that bad about it because I have been busy and I was doing good things. When Satan gets his greatest hooks in us is when there's some truth to it. There is some truth to this. We are busy. But is that really the reason? Turn to Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14. Let's look at the Master himself. We read about imitating Christ. We sing about imitating Christ. Jesus was busy. Those 3 years of public ministry, you know, we don't meet him a lot before then. We meet him very briefly at his birth. We meet him very briefly as a 2-year-old. We meet him very briefly as a 12 years old. And then the fast forward button gets pushed and he's 30 and he's on it and he's working publicly. He's doing what he was sent to do. You don't see a lot of downtime. Even when he tried to make downtime, it didn't work very well. For those familiar with the 17 time period and so on, you remember that period, what we call the retirement period? About 6 months before Jesus' death, he just disappears, or tries to. He took the disciples, he took the ones that would become the apostles, and he just went away. He knew he didn't have much time left. He knew he had to do a lot more teaching and get them prepared for their work, and they're gone. But the crowds still found him. And here's an example of that. While he's trying to get away from the busyness, they find him. And as you'll be familiar with, it, Matthew chapter 14 is the feeding of the 5,000. Hey, there's a lot of people here. It's getting pretty late. We don't have any food. What do we have? Well, there's this little boy. He's got a sack lunch. We got a little bitty kid's meal. Let me have it. And so here's Jesus' day. He has taught all day. You know, that 5,000, remember, that's not a true number. The 5,000 was the men. It didn't count the women and the children. You could have tripled this number easily. We don't know how many it was. It's been a busy day. He has taught all day. Now night comes and he feeds. And now it's getting... Pick up. Verse 22. At the end of all this, busy day, straightway, Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go to the other side while he sent the multitudes away. Okay, you got it? Big crowd of people, thousands upon thousands. Okay, you go here and they're going there. And now where's Jesus? Now finally, alone, right? Verse 23. And when he sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. Jesus is busy. We misuse phrases sometimes. And here's what we are keen to say. I just can't find the time. Do you praise you ought to? No, but I want to be better. I got to find the time. That's not the statement. It's not about finding time. It's about making time. Jesus didn't find time. He made it. He made sure that it happened. But see how personal and close to home this is. For those of us who use this as our answer, you know, I don't pray as I ought to. You are right. I got to be better. But my life's at full speed right now. Let me just throw some examples. Busy, right? When's the last day you didn't go to your favorite website? When's the last day in your busy days you didn't do your social media if you do it? When's the last day you skipped it? In your busy days, when's the last time you didn't do what you like? Whether it's watching your favorite news channel, watching your favorite sports show, watching your favorite movie actor, character, going shopping, going out to eat. In our busy days, you know what we do? We do the things we want to do, no matter how busy we are. And we don't find the time to do them. We make the time to do them. We put other things aside to do them. So yeah, there's some truth to I'm too busy. But is that really the answer? Well, to find out, let's just play a game. Now it's hypotheses time. Tomorrow, the phones start exploding. Text dinging. Emails shooting out. It's been an accident. One of you involved in it. Down where 31 meets 75, biggest intersection in town. There's been an accident. It's bad. How bad is it? I don't know. They're life-flighting them. They're on the way to Birmingham. They've already given them blood. Everything I'm getting is it's 50-50. They don't know. Do you know who says, I'm glad you told me that. I sure wish I could pray about it, but I'm just too busy today. Do you know who says that? Nobody in this room says that. Do you know who thinks that? Nobody in this room thinks that. You pray. No matter what you were doing. No matter where you were, that 8 o'clock, 8:30, 10, 15, 1, wherever you were in that schedule, wherever you were on that outline of stuff, nobody in this room in that moment says, I'm too busy. We don't. So yeah, it's a nice sounding excuse. There's just enough truth to it to maybe ease our conscience a little bit. But then there are things that happen where we don't worry about the time and we don't worry about the schedule. We pray. This is not it. It never was it. I don't know what to say. You're right, I don't pray like I ought to, but I just don't really know how to talk to God very well. There's a little truth to that. I don't know the background of very many people in this room. I don't know if you know my background or not. Until I met Carla, I'd never been to a worship service. Until I met Carla, talk about giving attention to reading. I'd never done any reading. I didn't know anything about the Bible. Zero. Nor did I care. And but thankfully, by providence, I did meet her. Thankfully, his mom and dad let me hang around long enough till I became Christian. And I remember, I'm just talking for myself, and maybe others you maybe come out of some denominationalism or like me, was unchurched. If you were raised going to church and you were raised as some of you were, you're not going to get this. But for somebody like me, now I'm a Christian and I'm trying to pray and I don't even know where to start. You're talking to someone you can't see. There's some awkwardness to that. And you just don't know how to do it. Not when you first start. So there's some trouble with that when you start out. You know what there's also some trouble with? People who's been a Christian 20, 30, 40 years and they've still never learned to talk to God. Their prayer is nothing more than a bunch of repetitive stuff they've heard other people pray. Instead of communicating with God, they just repeat what other people have said. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but there can be. And Brother White just read for us about vain repetitions. Vain repetitions can be alive and well in the church. If we're just saying things because we've heard other people say them, but there's no heartfeltness to it. There's no sincerity to it. We're just repeating the party line. There are people who really don't know how to pray to God very well. They've never learned to communicate to Him. That's real. But is that really the problem? There's some truth to it. And that's why Satan can grab us with it. It's why our conscience might be okay, that our prayer life isn't what it ought to be. But is this really true? Turn to Romans chapter 8. Before we make application, the first thing we want to do is just remove the argument. I'm too busy. No, Jesus removes that argument for us. We don't find time, we make time. And in one of His busiest days, He made time. So don't give me that. Let's stop sweet-talking ourselves. Too busy is not really the answer. I just don't know what to say. Okay, there may be some truth to that. Is that really the answer? Turn to Romans 8. Read with me verse 26. Likewise, the Spirit helps our infirmities. For we know not what we should pray for as we ought. Aren't you thankful Paul put himself in our boat? You know, that verse reads a whole lot different if Paul says something like, you peons, you bottom dwellers, you have trouble with your prayer. Oh, not me. Oh, not us apostles. Not us strong ones. No, he said we, and he said it twice. We don't know what we should pray for, actually 3 times, as we ought. Here's Paul saying, this is real. There are times, and I'm guessing in your private prayer life, there's probably been times when your first statement was, I don't really know what to say about this. I don't really know how to ask this. Have you ever been there? I've been there. This is real. I don't really know how to verbalize how I want to say this. And you just tell him. And what Paul has told us is, the Spirit helps us with that. Deity who knows our thoughts. Deity who knows our hearts. Deity that knows our minds. Deities that knows our desires. He helps with that. So no, this is not an excuse that we need to be flying around. There is help for this, and the help is deity itself. So no, it's really not the issue, is it? So, second scenario. Is our prayer life what it ought to be? No, I could be better. I just don't know how to do it. I've always struggled with that. I just don't know what to say. Okay, if that's real, then scenario number 2. Tomorrow, phones buzz, texts are dinging, emails are flying, and the phones explode. So-and-so, one of you just got back from the doctor. Stage 4. Nothing they can do. Family is beside themselves. Do you know who says this? I'm glad you told me about that. If I knew how to pray, if I could talk to God better, I'd do it. But I just don't know how to do it. You know who says that? Nobody says that. Do you know who thinks it? Nobody thinks it. You just pray. You pray for their faith. You pray for their strength. You pray for them. And you're not worried about if it sounds flowery. You don't worry about, have I got all the words exactly right? No, you just pray. This is not the answer. This is a potential problem, but it's not the root problem. I'm too busy. I just don't know how to do it well enough. I don't feel worthy. Turn to the 8th Psalm. You talk about an element of truth. That's when Satan gets us. That's his strongest arguments is when there's an element of truth. There's 10 million pounds of truth to this one. There's not an element of truth to this. This is true. I hope this doesn't make anybody get ashamed. You're not worthy. And neither am I. None of us are worthy to have the ear of God. None of us are worthy to go to His throne. And the psalmist is acknowledging that. Here's a psalm of David, and like us, he had his weaknesses. Like us, he had some really hard-hearted actions. Like us, he acted selfishly sometimes. Like us, he acted when he knew better. And here's what he says in verse 3. When I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, the stars which you have ordained. What he says is, when I consider your creation, when I consider your power, when I consider that you just opened your mouth and spoke and all this happened. Power of your word. Power of your hand. When I consider that, verse 4, what is man? And that's not man as in male. It's not talking about the male sex. It's talking about mankind. You can go look it up when you get home. What is mankind? What is humanity? That's what he's asking. When I consider your power, when I consider your work, when I consider your handiwork, who in the world are we? What is mankind? That you would be mindful of him. What is mankind? That you would visit him. To paraphrase that, David is saying, you got to be kidding me. With me and all my weaknesses and my stubbornness and my rebellious streak and my lazy streak and my selfish streak, you would be concerned about me? You're aware of me? You care about my needs and my disappointments and my hurts? When I consider your hands, it blows my mind that you would care about me. That's what the 8th Psalm is saying. David understood unworthiness. The psalmist understood a sense of littleness. And he understood it is amazing that he would listen to us. So no, there's some reality to this. We aren't worthy. But here's the beauty of it. Turn to Philippians 4. The beauty of it is we are special to God. Remember that very first psalm we read? The righteous have God's ear. He is aware. He acts. He delivers. He answers. We are special to him. Philippians chapter 4. The old King James says, be careful for nothing. The newer versions say, in nothing be anxious. But even that doesn't give it exactly the proper kick. What it's really emphasizes, don't be over anxious. There are things that causes anxiety. There are things that kind of give us, a kick in the gut. There are things that punch us in the mouth and we do a double take on it. What he's saying is, even when those bad things happen, we're not to the point where we just shut down. We still have responsibilities. Don't become so concerned about these things that we lose the ability to serve. We lose the ability to carry on. Don't be over anxious in anything is the idea. But in everything, so here's the contrast. In everything, by prayer and in supplication, with thanksgiving, let your request be made known to God. No, it's not about worthiness. It's about that even in our unworthiness, he says, bring it to me. Give it to me. Tell me. Look in verse 7. And the peace of God that passeth all understanding will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. You know why that peace isn't there in verse 8? Because we're not doing the things in verse 7 like we ought to. We're not leaving the anxiousness down. We're not just giving it to the Lord. Again, that doesn't get rid of that butterfly feeling, but it brings peace. It doesn't get rid of the stage 4, but it brings peace. It doesn't get rid of but it brings contentment. And maybe we don't have the peace and we don't have the contentment because we're not giving the prayers with thanksgiving. We're the problem. Our problem is not our unworthiness. Our problem is that in our unworthiness, we're not doing what Jesus pleaded with us to do, and that was, give me your request. Let me hear you. Is this our problem? It's a potential problem because we aren't worthy, and I'm sure, I hope we would all feel it. But is that really why we don't pray like we ought? Scenario 3. This last Friday, 2 days ago, right before clock out time. Principal, boss, overseer, whatever, apply it. The people over you, gets everybody together. I hate to ruin your weekend, but I just need you to know that Corporate has sent me a memo because of all the shutdowns, because of, people just, we're going to have to lay off half of you. The company's taking a hit, taking a beating. We can't keep all of you. And I hate that I'm telling you this before the weekend. I don't want to ruin it. But on Monday, those names are going to come. I don't know who it is yet. I'm just letting you know so you can prepare yourself. I don't want you to be blindsided Monday morning. Half of you are going to be gone. Who says this? I sure would like to ask God about that. I sure would like to have some peace and contentment about that. I would like to be able to just lay that up at the throne and not be over anxious about it. But I'm just not worthy. You know who says that? Nobody says that. You know who thinks that in this room? Nobody thinks it in this room. You know what you do? You give it to God. You pray about it. You petition about it. Of course you do. Of course I do. It's not the answer. Is there some reality? Is there some truth to all of these? Yeah. But that's not the issue. Because when the wrecks happen, we're praying, right? When the bad doctor reports happen, we're praying, right? When the layoffs are about to happen, we're praying, right? Yeah, and there's 1,000 other scenarios I can throw out there for you. So what's the problem? Because it's not this. Maybe it's because in the moment we don't feel the need. And I know this might be a little bit cheesy, but I want you to notice, that's not in quotation marks. Because we would probably never admit that. We might admit there's some times I hope we won't admit it anymore. I hope we would never make these lame excuses again. But there's probably some times, even if we just set it in our mind, I'm just so busy. I'm going to be better at it one day, though. I just don't know how to do it, but I'm going to get better at it one day. I don't feel worthy, but the stronger I get and the more faithful I can get, I'll be better at it one day. Well, those are never really the answers anyway. We just say it. This one, we probably would never say. Not out loud. We wouldn't admit that we feel we don't need Him. But let me suggest it's probably closer to the truth than all the other ones put together. Because those other ones, I interjected a crisis. It's a life flight. Death is literally in these paramedics' hands. I interjected a crisis. There is a medical diagnosis and there's no hope for this. I interjected a crisis. A man's about to be laid off. He's not going to be able to provide for his family. When the crisis comes, you know what comes with it? The prayers come. We make the time. We don't worry about how well we're talking. We don't worry about how well we're phrasing the words. We're not in that moment worried about worthiness. We just want God to hear. When the crisis comes, when the helplessness comes, when the hopelessness comes, when we have lost control of a situation, we use the trump card. When we've lost control of something, okay, let me throw a bone out. Let me go to God in prayer. But now here's the catch. Our life is not filled with crisis. When's the last time you got a phone call about a horrible life flight? When's the last time you got a phone call about a stage 4 diagnosis? When's the last time you got a phone call about half the shop being shut down? They happen, but they don't happen every day. And what happens is, our life is pretty much, for the most part, kind of crisis-free. And we're just skating along. God has blessed us like no people before. Our needs are wanted. Or our needs, rather, being seen to. Our wants are being seen to. We have it pretty good. And Lord willing, none of those scenarios happen tomorrow. I hope you don't get that call. I was just making stuff up. But I think all of you agreed that if those phone calls came tomorrow, you would pray. What if they don't come tomorrow? Will you take heed to your prayer life? Will you pray more often tomorrow, not because there's a crisis, but because the Creator has asked us to? Self-sufficiency is the problem. We look at prayer that Brother White just read for us. Give us this day our daily bread. We're so self-sufficient, we got a month worth of bread already in the freezer. Now, we'll probably go shopping this week. It's not because we probably need it. Closet full of clothes. closet full of shoes, refrigerator and hamper and full of food. And that's because I worked hard, and I sweated, and I studied hard, and I got my degree, and I developed my... And what we start looking at is, look at what I've done. We're not much better than Nebuchadnezzar. Look at this great kingdom that I have done. Look what I've built. Look what I've earned. Look what I have bought. And when we're eat up with self-sufficiency, this thankfulness in Philippians 4, it's not there. And then something happens that takes the wind out of the sail. Oh, now I got to pray. Here's the problem. The problem is that in much of our moments, we just don't feel the need. We've got stuff taken care of. Thank you very much. Look in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Is this true? Do we really not need Him? Are we really the answer? 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Look in verse 5. 2 Corinthians 3, verse 5. The old King James says, we are not sufficient. And that's a really good word. That does give the point. The newer versions use the word adequate. Think about that. Is something good? It's adequate. That's what we're being described as. We're not great. We're not top shelf. We're adequate. Look at this. It's not that we are sufficient of ourselves. It's not that we are adequate of ourselves to think anything of ourselves. Our sufficiency is of God. By ourselves, all the stuff we buy, the stuff we build, the stuff we are, the stuff we have, just not even adequate. Our adequacy, our sufficiency is through God. And sitting right here today in this room, in this setting, we all get it, we all know it, we all amen it. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock, 9:15, 10:45, 12 o'clock, got to get the kids here, got to have... Tomorrow, the crazy cycle starts up. Are we going to feel the need to pray? Are we going to take heed to that? Prayer is a habit that begins with a deep sense of need every day. And if we will get, if tomorrow, today, we start taking heed to this, it can form a habit. And it won't be that periodic thing. Every day, we are fighting Satan. And we talk all these physical things, we feel like we don't need him. Every day, we're engaged in a spiritual war against one who is smarter than us, wiser than us. He knows our weaknesses. He knows where he's gotten us in the past, and he just tightens those screws. And we need Jesus every day because we're fighting Satan every day. We need Jesus every day because every day we are making decisions. Some more consequential than others, granted. But how many decisions do you make a day? We're making decisions every day. Therefore, we need prayers. We need Jesus. We feel the need for him every day. We're fighting every day. We're making decisions every day. Every day people are seeing us. Some days more than others. But every day somebody's seeing us. We need him every day because we're fighting every day. We're making decisions every day. We're being an example every day. And we need help with that. We need him every day because there are critical tasks that we're doing and so on. Get your psalm books out. Look at number 60. Look at number 63. I know you, like us, we also use the overhead, but I think you can still sing from a songbook, can't you? Turn to number 63. I believe we'll make this just fine. But sing with me verse 2 and verse 3, and then we'll sing the chorus. Before, recognizing without him we got nothing.
Temptations lose their power.
Turn to Romans 12. Let's do more than just sing that song. Let's live like we mean it. Let's pray like we mean it. And concerning all those talents and skills and blessings that we have, this room is a smart room, talented room, skilled room, trained room. There's people in here who can do a lot of things. That doesn't mean you're self-sufficient. It just means God's blessed you and gave you an opportunity to develop something. Don't forget where it came from. Read verse 3 with me. Romans 12, verse 3. For I say through the grace given unto me, to every man that's among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Who is man that you would be mindful of us? That was the prayer. Who are we compared to him? Don't think of ourselves more highly than we ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith. God has dealt to us a lot of abilities and skills and talents and opportunities. And so, you the best song leader at the East Abbottville Church? Wonderful, I'm glad you are. Use your ability and you use your talent well. Use it up. But don't you forget where that talent came from. You the best Bible class teacher here? Wonderful, I'm glad you are. Use it and use it well. But don't you forget where that talent came from. This morning we talked about exhortation. There are people who are really good at that. You're the best exhorter here. You're the best encourager here. Wonderful. God blessed you. Now use that talent. But don't you forget where it came from. Don't think more highly of ourselves than we ought to think. We need Him for all these things that we think are ours. Things that we've claimed as ours. Take heed to prayer life. Get your songbooks out. Jared, what's your number?
280.
Number 280, if you're using the book. Prayer is an incredible blessing. But it's reserved for God's family. His ears open to the righteous. His ears open to His children. And I don't know who is who here. So if this applies to you, it applies to you. I don't know it, but you know it. And you rest assured God knows it. If you're not a Christian, I just want to ask a couple questions. Do you believe Jesus is who He said that He was? Do you believe He is who He claimed to be? He claimed to be the Son of God. Now, if you believe that by faith. There's no other way you could believe it. So, act on your faith. If you believe He is who He says He is, if you believe He did what Scriptures tells us He did, then confess Him as your King. Repent of your sins that caused Him to have to die. Repent and be baptized, wash those sins away, and you have the ear of God. You are among the righteous who can go to Him at His throne and receive the peace and contentment. If you're a Christian, and the truth is, you just hadn't taken advantage of this. Too busy, right? Don't know how to do it well enough, right? Stop it. It's called repenting. One of the foundations of the gospel. Make a decision. I will take heed to this. I will pay more attention to this, and I will be better at it. It might be that in all this talk about prayer, you decide you want the prayers. You want prayers of your brethren. You want your name called to the throne of God. We're here to help you. We're ready to help you with that. We'd love to help you with that. I'm going to step out of the way. I know it can be uncomfortable to come forward when there's a stranger in the room. I don't want me to be what keeps you from doing what you're supposed to be, from doing what you know to do. Brother Hall can come forward. One of the elders can come forward. Somebody you know, somebody you love, and somebody you know loves you. They'll help you. Just don't delay. Do it while we stand and sing.